like MFU is a longtime proponent and supporter of food security. We've actively created, processing in the local food space. More Montanans having access to Montana food is good for food resiliency in the state. This testimony is really long, so I'm not actually going to read it all, but it's all, it's nice to keep each paragraph a separate idea, so that way they can track your thoughts as you go through. Like this study is coming about because there have been lots of changes in cottage food or in homemade food law, which is causing some confusion with cottage food law, which is causing confusion for producers and folks who are doing food safety and liability. So we're trying to put this study together so folks can come to the table and talk about where this is and is not working. So I would, highlight that. I would say, we think food safety policies can and should protect consumers, without limiting farmers and ranchers and food processors. We realize there's a balance to this, and we're grateful that the study will help bring the players to the table to have this conversation. It's really important at the end that you just reiterate your statement, we urge a due pass on SJ11. Thank you for your time and consideration. So there's that introductory structure, then there's the body of what you want to say about it, and then there's your closing repeat call to action ask, this is what I'm asking you to do. Just keep it really nice and clear. Everything you're saying in a testimony is public record. I just like to tell folks that. I mean, it's not like it's a private meeting or anything like that, but it's a really important thing that folks make their voice heard in our state legislature. So that's testifying. Any questions about that before we jump into the conversation in the hallway with your legislator? Cool. And everything that I just worked through is a PDF on our website called Testimony Tips. You can click on it, download it, read it. There's lots more information on it. It's maybe nervous and scary the first time you do it, but once you do it, it is no big deal. On Zoom, if you're planning to testify on Zoom, you basically follow the exact same format. They will only hear you. They will not see you on Zoom. It's just audio. And they will say, proponents. Oh, we're also going to work through how to do questions. Sorry, I forgot about that part. So there is also a format to taking questions from the committee. But if you're on Zoom, there will be a chance where they'll call for online proponents to raise their hand on Zoom. At that point in time, you would click the raise hand button. It's the only button you can click on the Zoom webinar for the legislature. And then they will give you an unmute button. You'd unmute, testify, and then they would remove your audio permissions. So it's pretty simple, but you do have to physically click the raise hand button is the other thing. So
and when they're asking for testimony, they always go people who support the bill or proponents, and then people who oppose the bill, opponents. And they won't be mixed together. They'll do one and then they'll do the other.
Yeah. And then the other thing with that too is the chairs and committee members, they do not like repetition. And so if there have been 10 people ahead of you and they've made a lot of the points that you were planning to make, you can just say that oh, the proponent testimony has covered a lot of the things that are also important to me. Here's one point that hasn't been raised. I want to make sure you're aware of it. And then, you just keep it nice and short. They have a lot of bills on their schedules right now. And so short testimony is way more appreciated than repetition. And I know it's super frustrating because Montanans drive a long way to make their voice heard, and then to have a minute to say something is, I hear that, I understand that. But effective looks different based on the scenario. So if you testify on a bill, you are eligible to be asked questions about the bill. And so if you testify on it, you'd sit back down or you just stay on the Zoom. And then let's say Jodi has a question for me and she's a member of the committee. I'll just show you what speaking through the chair to address the question looks like.
So at this point, I am not the chairman. I am a member of the committee. And I would say, I have a question for Ms. Prevost.
And then I would walk up there, or I'd come off mute.
And I would say, you talked about the changes around the cottage food laws. Do you know where the cottage food laws and how they are different from the homemade food laws exist?
And then I would have to start with the chair first. So I'd like say, Mr. Chairman, Representative Koterba. That's a great question. Thank you for the opportunity to address this concern further. You know, there's two separate pieces of statute that are governing this, but they're not playing very nicely together. And then I would give like an explanation of my answer. And then I would say, you know, like, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Representative Koterba, you know, happy to answer any more questions. If you mess up like any of this format, it's totally okay. Like the chair is gonna remind you, the chair will walk you through it. Like they're pretty like amiable to like making sure that people are able to participate. So don't stress too much about it, but I just want folks to be prepared.
It feels really odd when you go to testify for the first time, because people are making these like very pointed, Mr. Chairman, Representative Minor, you know, and then talking, and you're like, I have no idea who these people are. They do have name placards, so that helps. But it's better to know that it's going to happen than to walk in cold.
And if you don't know people's last names, you can just say representative or senator. You don't actually have to say their last name if you don't know it. Like, it's great if you can, but don't let that stress you out too much. Cool. Well, now we're going to do like a mock conversation. And so a couple things I'll say before this is you may not know where somebody is at on an issue when you first approach them. And so sometimes you have to like feel it out. Like you have to figure out if they're supportive or not. And so for the sake of today's demonstration, we're going to do some pretty like obvious opposite positions on the bills, just to like show you an example of like a harder conversation where somebody's polar opposite of your position. And then we'll do one that's like a supportive conversation so they can like learn how to support the issue. If you get into a conversation and it's, you know, you start to feel a little bit like you're in tough territory or you don't really know the answers to their questions, that's okay. You just tell them, you know, I don't know the answer to your question, but I can follow up with you. The other thing too is like if you get into it and they're like combative or, you know, or you feel like you're getting a little too passionate, like you can always just step back to your main talking points and like just rely on those main talking points to help you kind of bring it back to the point of your conversation. So today Jodi is going to approach me as an advocate. I'm going to pretend to be an elected representative. Just so everyone's aware, like this is going to be a polar opposites conversation. So you can kind of see what it looks like to talk to somebody that does not agree with what you're working on. So we'll start with that, and then we'll talk through a supportive one, and then that's pretty much what we have today. And we're happy to take questions or practice or whatever that may look like. Okay, so Jodi is going to come talk to me.
So if she walks out of a committee meeting and I know that this is the person that I want to talk to, I can step up to her and say, Representative Prevost, I'm Jodi Koterba with Montana Farmers Union. Do you have a moment to speak?
Hi, nice to meet you, Jodi. You know, I'm on my way to my next committee meeting. I've got about 2 minutes. Why don't you walk and talk with me?
Great. Thank you for giving me your time. I really appreciate that you're serving on the House Ag Committee this year. I wanted to touch base with you on the upcoming advocacy and food security bill that is talking about creating a study for farmers markets and their availability and their locations. Are you familiar with the bill SJ11?
You know, we have with so much legislation coming at us, you know, it'd be great if you could just, you know, tell me what you think about it. That would be helpful.
Okay, so I think food safety policies are really important to protect the consumers. But I think that there's some confusion that is limiting our producers to be able to market their products, especially in the local food markets. There's been a lot of changes around cottage food laws and about homemade local food laws in the last couple of sessions. And I think there's some confusion and they're not working great together.
So I'm just going to stop you right there. I'm just not on board with food safety policies. I don't think that we should be putting any red tape on our producers. I think farmers markets should be governed by the people who want to be part of them, to run them. So like, I just don't think this is a good investment of state dollars.
So I think that local control is very important. And I think that this study would allow us to look at where the local control is, where we do need some state supervision and some state oversight. I think that right now there's some conflict between our producers and our food safety laws. And if you'd really consider looking at allowing this study to be put into place, I think it would greatly help our situation.
Well, I'm just not supportive of this measure at this point in time. I probably need to learn a little bit more about it. Do you have information that I can follow up with for you?
I do. I have this information that we've put together. My contact is on here. If you have any questions, I'd really like you to consider looking at supporting SJ11. It is not changing the laws. It is putting together a study to look at the existing laws.
Cool. Well, I have to hop into my other committee. It was nice to meet you, Jodi. I appreciate your time and hearing how this will impact you. I'll definitely reconsider my position as we get closer to the hearing.
Thank you.
So that's like somebody that does not agree with you. But we still had a good conversation about it. Like, even though like I was not in a position to just be like, I love what you're doing. Like Jodi still was able to get her points across. She still talked about like why she felt it was important. And then like that will, register with legislators as they have the chance to kind of like think about what you said. I also like to think that sometimes, like, even if you move somebody from opposition to neutral, like, that's a victory too. Like, even if you don't get somebody to be supportive, like, just remember that, like, moving the needle on any of those conversations, like, can be helpful. So now we're gonna do just like a really quick supportive conversation, because there are certain ways that you can escalate the conversation to help that person also become an advocate for the issue you're working on. So, Jodi's gonna approach me. This will be like a supportive conversation about the same type of legislation.
Representative Prevost, I'm Jodi Koterba with
Hi,
Montana
Jodi.
Farmers Union.
Oh, I love Farmers Union.
Do you have a minute to talk?
I do, yeah. I'm on my way to my next committee, but I do have time.
Okay, so today I'm really concerned with SJ11. It's
I've been hearing about this bill.
Yeah, it's a bill to put together a study on local farmers markets and some of the local food safety laws to allow producers to have a better clarification.
Okay, yeah, this sounds great. I actually did listen a little bit to the testimony that happened in the Senate side on this bill. I'm definitely interested to see what we can do to solve this confusion.
Yeah, I think that this is something that really needs some time, and we really appreciate your support. I have this handout of our issues and why we think it needs to be happening. My contact is on the back. If I can be a resource for you at all, or if you need additional information, please feel free to reach out to me.
Is there somebody that I should talk to on the committee that you think would make it, I should have a conversation with to help move this issue forward? Like, what can I do to further support it other than like voting yes?
Yeah, I know that Representative X and Representative P are both anti SJ11.
Okay.
They're all about local control. I don't think they understand that this is not changing the laws,
Cool.
It's studying them.
Okay, well, I will definitely do my best to have a conversation with them. I really appreciate you being here today. And I appreciate knowing more about this issue and look forward to hearing it in committee soon.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Perfect. So like you can use that opportunity to leverage their relationships with other legislators to make a difference as well. So that's two different types of conversations. Sometimes you literally have like 5 seconds where you're like walking with them and you're just like, this is who I am. This is what I'm here about. Here's the leave behind. I really would urge you to consider voting yes or no on this issue. My contact info is there. Give me a call. Like, it'll be quick in a lot of instances. And text these phone numbers that are on the legislative website. Call them, text them, email them. Like, there's more than just in-person opportunities to share your viewpoint. The legislative system does have like an system, like an internal system where like if you use the legislative system to send them a letter, it gets delivered to their email through that as well. So, or like they'll physically print out like messages that get phoned in and they'll like put them on their desk. So phone calls, emails, using the legislative system are all really effective ways to make your voice heard if you are not there in person too. So that is our little I guess I forgot to slip slides, but practice like definitely makes it easier, but lots of practice will build your confidence. So don't think that just because your first conversation felt really shaky that you're a bad advocate. Like, that is just not the case. You have to practice this. You have to keep trying. Speaking up for the things that you care about is the only way that these folks are going to know about the impacts. And so practice makes it easier, but lots of practice will make you more confident. So Jodi and I did the conversations. This is our contact info. We're happy to answer any questions. I'll stop sharing screens so we can just have a little bit more, maybe a conversation, but appreciate everybody's time and being on the call today. I hope there's been some useful tools for you all in this. Jodi and I are both more than happy to help anybody moving forward in their advocacy journey. So I'll leave it at that. Oh, we've got a chat. Is there an effective way to follow up in the conversation if the conversation is very brief? Yeah, that's a great question, Chrissy. It can be like very helpful to shoot them a text. I find people are more responsive to text in those instances, like, hey, we met in the halls. I, was wanting to talk to you about this issue. Please, reach out to me if you have questions, or is there a better time I can come chat with you? Like if you're still in the building. If you're planning to like be in the Capitol all day, sometimes it's like, hey, can I grab you during lunch in the rotunda and we can just chat a little bit longer? Can I get you after a committee meeting, like whatever their availability may be, but like texts are definitely going to be probably the best way to reach them like that. Emails are really helpful for more like detail, but I also recommend like following up with a text to be like, hey, I sent you an email with more information I would like you to consider. Honestly, like I don't think you can ever bug people too much because like they are getting inundated with emails and texts, so you can't just like assume that they've seen it. So it never hurts to kind of follow up a few times. Absolutely.
And it really helps if you have created a relationship prior to the session starting. And so even though this session is well underway and, on its way out, reaching out to them and letting them know who you are and what you produce or what you support or what program you are working on, especially if you're working on some kind of community action, or you're working on developing a new market or something to that effect. If they know you and they recognize your name, you're going to have more impact, especially when you send that text or that email or make that quick phone call that someone else is answering.
And a lot of these like state legislators, like they don't have staff, like it's them. They're fielding emails, they're fielding their calls, they're fielding their texts, they're reading all these bills, like they're trying to figure this all out too. Like it's a joke, but it's like not really a joke. Like they're all drinking from the fire hose, and like that is the case. Like the breadth of topics of laws that they're considering is so wide, and like we have a citizen legislature, so like these folks are not professional politicians in the sense that like they all have other jobs in their private lives, and so they're hearing bills about agriculture, but maybe they're like a nurse in Billings, and so they have very little exposure to like what actually happens in a butcher shop or what's happening at a food co-op. So like just have to keep all of that in mind, that these folks are just citizens like we all are. Like they're also learning every day. Right now, like I kind of mentioned earlier, they're seeing like a huge amount of bills. Like I think yesterday somebody told me 70 new bills got introduced yesterday for consideration. So I mean, it is just moving super fast. Long-term relationship building with legislator strategy. That's a great question. I definitely think it's like always being willing to have a conversation, but not always asking them to do something. So that way, like, they don't have this like reaction when they see you of like, oh my God, they're gonna ask me to do something. So like just being like, hey, like, how's your wife? Like, how are your grandkids? Like, oh, last time I talked to you, you were heading to the National Legislative Conference. Like, how did that go? Like being like conversational. Yeah, just like get to know them. Like build that personal relationship, and that helps them view you as a resource too. So that way, like, let's say, I keep using co-ops as an example because it's in your name, Chrissy, on your Zoom screen, but like, let's say there's a bill that's gonna say like co-ops can no longer operate in the state of Montana because whatever, like I hope, I would hope that would never happen. But let's say that bill like comes up, like they remember because you've started to build a relationship, like, oh, she's involved with a co-op, like I should check with her to see what she thinks of this. And so like being ready to like be a two-way resource is great, but yeah, don't always be asking them to do something is a great way. But also like if you see them out and about, like, hi, it's good to see you, like just recognizing them. You know, we try to always recognize local legislators that like come to farmers union events and like, you know, we're so grateful you're here. You know, we appreciate your time. Like we just try to be recognizing that they're there.
And I'll address that. So the question was asked that should you thank them for their time or their service or whatever? And it's really important to recognize that you understand that they are putting forth effort. Whether that is that they supported, if you can be very specific and say, hey, I really appreciate that you voted yes on whatever bill, and lead into that conversation, that you know how they're voting and that you've tracked what they're doing. But just saying that they're serving on that committee, or that they're serving you, because really it is a public service position.
Yeah, and I also think you have to make a judgment call there. Like if you literally have 10 seconds with them,
Yeah.
say what you've got to say.
Right.
Don't worry about like, thanks for serving. Like, it's great to do that, but I think it's, you know, I like to always end my conversations with like, hey, thanks for your consideration. Like, I was really glad to have the chance to talk to you. Like, I think that you just have to make that judgment call. Like, if you've had a nice little 5-minute chat in the hallway, like while they're waiting to go do something, saying like, hey, I appreciate you stepping up and, you know, being a public servant for Montana. Like, that can be super nice, but if you've got like 30 seconds, I would not prioritize that. I would prioritize your main point of why you wanted to talk to them.
Yeah.
So,
and as far as building relationships outside of the time, even before I took this position and when I had a stance of I don't do politics, we always invited all the local House and Senate representatives to all of our public events. So if the FFA was hosting a banquet, we would invite them to attend the banquet. If we were having a farmer's market where the kids were selling the things that they've raised in their projects, we would always make sure that they were on the invitation lists, so that they had an idea what was going on in our program and in our community. And so if you're a producer and you have a farmer's market stand, you know, to invite them to come visit you at the farmer's market, or if you are promoting the creation of a new cooperative, you know, inviting them to come to a meeting. Even, I mean, this time of year, they're not going to come. But on the off season, a lot of times they'll come just so that they know what's going on.
Any other questions or, I also I've usually, sorry, I try to ask like when I start these is like, what's everybody's level of experience? Like, have you made the phone call before? Have you testified before? So apologize that I didn't ask that, but we probably have various levels of advocacy in this call. So, any question you have, we can do our best. Yeah, Robin.
I have a question. I'm looking for the hand up thing.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Oh, sure.
So you may not be able to answer this, and you know, I am new to this world, so. But my question is, and I appreciate this, the long-term relationship question, and you know, you guys' efforts to try to describe the potential arc here. But I'm just curious if there's, if you guys know, or if there's a statistic on how frequently there's turnover in this legislature.
Oh yeah, that's a great.
It feels to me like we're I have a fraction of experience here, and it feels to me like we're constantly just talking to new people, and I'm just curious, like how do you work with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Montana's, House is 100 representatives and they all get reelected every 2 years. So the House has like massive turnover every time we have an election. I don't know right now off the top of my head, like the percentage of freshman legislators to returning, but there are quite a few like first time legislators
It's
in
in
that
40% range.
In the Senate, there's a little bit slower turnaround because they serve longer terms. So they serve 4-year terms. So they get 2 legislative sessions versus 1. So there is often like a little bit more experience, a little bit more stability in the Senate because of those longer terms. We are term limited in Montana, so you can only serve in the House for 8 years and you can only serve in the Senate for, I think it's 4 terms, but don't quote me on that. I don't know, 'cause I can't remember exactly the year splits. So when there is like a great thing you can do during election season is get to know both candidates, get to know folks who are running. Whether, you know, it's good to get to know people during primary, but it's great to get to know people during the general. That way, you've already started to establish a relationship with 2 people who are clearly interested in, you know, public representation. And so whichever one gets elected, you've already started that relationship building. So that can be like one way to do it. The other way to do it is just to like be ready to like have those beginner conversations at the start of the legislature, you know, when you're building that opportunity. The nature of our citizen legislature is that there's a lot of turnover in folks who are serving. You'll also notice that like some legislators are jumping from the Senate to the House to the Senate to the House, like that happens too. So, or their districts will get redrawn, and so then they are representing a different area, so then they're serving longer. So all of this impacts, you know, their experience and where they're at. But I just would recommend getting to know both folks during election season. And then like in the interim, just like stay in touch with some of these people. That's another thing I recommend too.
Yep. Thank you. Very helpful.
Of course. Any other questions? We got about a minute, it looks like. So Kate, you just tell us when, but we have a little bit of flexibility. So if folks that need longer, that's fine too. I just dropped a couple links in the chat as well. So the first one is to the testimony worksheet I was referring to. The second one is actually a webinar of how to use the legislative website because it is different than years past. And it is, not gonna lie, it is a little challenging. I'm always happy to, well, thanks for joining us, Mary. It was so nice to have you.
Thank you. It's great.
MontanaFarmersUnion.com. If you go to our legislation tab and click policy and positions, that's where all those PDFs are housed. So.
Wonderful. Well,
Cool.
Jodi, Rachel, thank you so much. Again, such a busy time of year to take the time out of your day to do this. This was so, so helpful and informative. So
Cool.
I hope everybody enjoyed it. Any final questions? Feel free to come off mute and let them out. No need to type them. Otherwise, we can part ways. And I am also happy to grab these links and just send a follow-up email to everybody who came today. So you can access them again. So
Cool.
I'll do
And
that.
I'll give my slides to you as well.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. That's very
Yeah.
helpful.
First.
But yeah, other than that, any last?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Very
Of
helpful.
course, yeah, of course. It's a busy but important thing. So
Yeah, 100%.
awesome. Cool. Well, thanks
Wonderful.
all.
Everyone have a lovely day.